Welcome, everybody, to the show with my guest, Kelly Hogan. How are you doing, Kelly?
Hey, I'm really good. I'm having a nice chill morning. It snowed here. The kids are home and all is well.
I don't even know what snow is anymore. No, I take that back. So we moved from Washington State to Arizona, and the
Yeah.
prevailing wisdom is that there's no such thing as snow in Arizona, which is untrue. Like 2.5 hours north, we have a very nice mountain with a very nice ski resort.
Okay.
And that blows people's mind. They're like, snow in Arizona? I'm like, yeah, it's not very far away at all. However, we will never see snow at my house in my lifetime.
We moved here to the mountains of North Carolina expecting lots of snow because, well, I attended college out here. So much snow. I've known people who lived here. Snow. I bought the children all sleds when we moved because it was one of the few promising reasons they were excited to come away from our hometown to the mountains. No snow. No. Today I could, well, let's see if I can turn. This is grass. There is no visible snow. We don't have snow, but we live in a valley surrounded by really high mountains, and a lot of the school kids live on those mountains. So they can't get to school. The mountains are white. Nothing here. So, yeah, I don't know if I'll have snow here in my lifetime either, JT. It used to happen, and maybe it will again. It's just been a really slow 3 years for snow, apparently. Here.
Yeah, that's how it works, right?
Yeah. But we did
So I'm
see snow
super.
recently.
But
I assume we're going to talk about something other than weather. But I do
maybe.
want to say, I went out to the Grand Canyon a couple weeks ago, and it was snowing at the Grand Canyon. We got to throw snowballs, and so we got a little bit of snow, just not where you would expect it here.
Snow in Arizona. There you have it, folks.
There you
We
have it.
have all 4 seasons as long as you drive
Yeah.
far enough. So I'm really excited to have you on. One of the main reasons is you've been doing this a really long time. Like, you've been doing carnivore a very long time.
That's true.
How did you get started with it? Because I'm pretty sure when you started it, the word carnivore hadn't been invented yet.
Except if you were learning about dinosaurs in school or something, or like a lion is a carnivore, but I'd never heard it discussed for humans, no. Okay, so where do I begin, JT? I really did have a lot of weight struggles growing up, and I had tried a lot of diets to try to fix that. So I was just like a chunky high schooler, chunky middle schooler. And then prom time would come, and I was like, I just always wanted to be not big. I'm almost 5'9". I have man hands, size 12 wide feet. I mean, I was big, and I just wanted to be little and cute. So I could starve myself down for a while, and I would do that right before prom, just eat almost nothing. One lean cuisine per day. I would lose, fit into the prom dress, go out to eat for prom, eat so much, and then just gain it all back within the next few weeks. And I'd gotten pretty good at that, sort of a binge and restrict thing. I went off to college, and I did that also, except without the restrict. I just binged and binged. We had a cat card where you could eat all you wanted at all of the cafeterias and little, like, Chick-fil-A on campus. And I put on about 50 pounds while I was in college. My husband and I have been together since high school, so throughout all of this, we were just young and in love. We got married young, and my weight kept going up and up and up. And I eventually got up to 262 pounds. And I was also starting to have health problems. I was getting boils on my legs, and very painful. Like, had to go be lanced and drained. It wasn't like a pimple. This was like packed with gauze. It was awful. My husband hates it when I say the word boils, but he was there for it. He knows it was so bad. Mental wise, I was having a lot of anxiety, especially at night. And I had been kind of tortured by that since I was a little girl. I would just imagine the trees falling on the house, fires happening. I would be at school all the time just imagining ways my mom had died. There was no reason. I didn't have a lot of childhood trauma or anything. I think my brain was just inflamed, and I never knew it. I was never medicated for any of that. It was just, especially nighttime anxiousness. All of that peaked at about age 25 when I was at my highest weight. Boils just kept showing up. I was all the time catching every little illness, no confidence, lots of anxiety. I went to the doctor for another boil to be lanced, which I think that one was on my right leg, but I'd had others that were on my butt. I mean, when you're a big girl and now you are literally having to bend over to have a doctor lance boils on your butt, it was seriously a low point. And I was very emotional because I didn't know what. Also, I used to be emotional. My husband is like, you have no emotion. I don't cry ever, but I'm so stoic. Like, I get happy, but I'm not a crier anymore. But boy, I used to be. And I was a crier that day because I didn't know how to stop these boils and they were embarrassing and I felt dirty and I kept changing body washes. And this doctor, again, this is age 25, he said, if you don't lose at least 100 pounds, and he was old. I don't think doctors talk this way anymore. He's still alive in his 90s, but he said, if you don't lose at least 100 pounds, I'm going to keep lancing boils until one of us dies. I've tried to lose 100 pounds. I really don't know how. He said, you are inflamed due to excessive carbohydrate intake. I didn't even know how to comprehend what that meant. I said, I have heard of carbs. Now, this was 2004. It's not that I was just stupid, but I was very ignorant. I was young, and it was 20 years ago. 20 years ago this month, I might add. And he said, I want you to give me 1 year of your life where you do not eat cereal. He actually had a little pamphlet. He said, eat nothing on this side of the paper. And it was cereals, potatoes, starches, sugar, breads. I was like, oh my gosh, that's all I eat. I thought I was doing pretty well because it was fat-free cereal, fat-free milk, fat-free everything. Child of the 80s. And so I said, well, what do I eat? He turns it over. All these cuts of meat, cheeses, some very low-carb vegetables like leafy greens, pickles, green beans. He told me I could have diet soda. He said, if you eat nothing but what's on this side of the paper for 1 year, you're not going to believe what'll change. I said, but how many calories? He said, I do not care. And in my mind, I thought, this guy is a nut. He has no idea how quickly I can put on weight if I just eat. And I really could very quickly pack on pounds. So I called my dad on the way home and I said, wait a minute. I told him I'm doing the slow carb thing. He said, well, I've heard good things. No, the word carnivore was not used. And I said, wait, I can't remember, are potatoes a carbohydrate? He's like, yes. I said, man, I liked potatoes, but that was it. Day one, and I did not go back. In the first year, I went back for my 1 year checkup. I've never had another boil, JT. That was it. Not one since then. The first year I lost 80 pounds. I felt so much better. I wasn't doing it exactly right because I had no idea what I was doing. So I wasn't eating enough fat. I hadn't joined any community. What online community? I wasn't even online. It was 2004. I had email, but it's not like there were carnivore tribes that I knew about. So I did it on my own, just like he said, for 5 years. And then I started to really be exhausted of cravings. I never got rid of sugar cravings. I mean, the whole 5 years was a bit of a nail biter, but I'm a little bit vain, so I was thrilled to not be overweight anymore. I was like, okay, I can fight the sugar cravings, and I did for 5 years. Then in 2009, I decided to just search, can you eat only meat? Because that's basically what I was doing. And I thought, is that even healthy? Is this even okay? It's been 5 years, but is this okay? And I wasn't feeling great, and it made me wonder, is this actually okay? And then I found this group called Zeroing In on Health. It's now a Facebook group, but back then it was just a big forum, and it was run by Charles Washington, who had already been carnivore for a couple years by that point. And it was a big group, and they all only ate meat. And they looked so hot. They all were like so good looking. And I had before and after pictures by this point. It had been 5 years. I said, I'm basically eating nothing but meat because I really didn't like leafy greens. I did still eat some pickles, but I basically cut even that out by then. I was mostly eating meat. And I told them that the cravings were getting unbearable. And that's when they said, you should not be having cravings if you have been eating meat for 5 years. They said, it's the diet soda. My gosh, why are you drinking diet soda? I got rid of that. And 3 days later, that was October. 3 days later, I was not having cravings. And they said, P.S., you should be eating more fat. If you don't have energy and you're not feeling good, eat more fat. So I switched from leaner meats to fattier meats. The sun came out again. I felt so good. Then I had friends, carnivore friends, fat, no more cravings. and life has been amazing, and that was 15 years ago last month. So,
How are you
long
not
answer.
dead?
I'm sorry, what's that?
How are you not dead?
And it's amazing how I've overcome my lack of fiber, really. Also, I used to have IBS issues so bad. I could not take a hike without constantly thinking, "There's no bathroom here." And my husband loves to hike. And we went to college in this area, mountain town, and I would try to go on hikes with him. But first of all, I was overweight. I did not have energy. Everything rubbed. And bathroom issues. It was so hard to just go out and enjoy. A rafting trip here takes 2.5 hours where we go rafting. You have no bathroom for 2.5 hours? It's like so many things I could have been doing, I couldn't do. And now our family hikes and rafts, and I don't even think about a bathroom. Yeah, IBS is gone.
Man, that is the biggest thing when people will get online and be like, you're afraid of something, right? Like, oh my gosh, you're afraid of carbs, you're afraid of vegetables, or you have an eating disorder, or how could you be so restrictive, or anything that anybody who has
Yeah,
ever done carnivore has heard, right?
a
Or
million times.
told anybody
Yes.
that they've done carnivore. And I sit there and I go, like, my results are not as extreme, but I sit there and I go, you don't understand what it's like to not have to worry about some of these things. And so I love that you brought up the hiking one, and I believe I shared it with you on yours. The fat adaptation for me, I like to hike too, right? My wife likes to hike, and it was never an issue, but it was always a concern of when am I going to eat, right?
Yeah.
Like, am I going to eat before I hike? Am I going to eat in the middle of the hike? How long is this hike going to take? What happens if we get stuck out there? What happens if you misread the trail and you're
Yes.
now out there for 6 hours instead of the 4 that you planned? When am I going to eat? Because in the past, if I got to that point where I needed to eat, we were going to have problems, right? Like I was going to get the low blood sugar. I was going to feel like, and I don't know how many times that led to probably what you would consider binge eating, because I
Mhm.
would just go to the pantry and find the fastest digesting carbohydrates I could possibly find and stuff them in my face because I felt like I was going to have like, I have like a degree in a medical background. I know I'm not going to die from like some minor, low blood sugar.
Right.
But in the moment, you're like, I'm going to pass out.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to pass out if I don't eat something. And then I eat everything I can possibly think of, wait for my blood sugar to regulate. And then of course it spikes too high. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I just do to myself?
Yeah.
Long story short, I will take the restriction on the foods I eat to not be restricted in all of these other areas of my life.
Yes. Anybody who says, "What are you afraid of carbs?" No, no, it's not the carbs, it's the boils, the blood sugar craziness, the IBS. That's what I'm afraid of, or the issues that it was caused. I don't know, people who, if you don't get it, you don't get it. And for people who haven't ever been really sick or really addicted or really struggling, it's very hard to put themselves in someone else's shoes. I live with a moderator who eats carbs. He's not sick. He's never had a major weight problem. And even he knows, though, that if his back starts hurting, he cuts back some on the high oxalate foods and the carbs. And he knows he feels better. But in general, he moderates. He does fine. So I know what that looks like. I'm not scared of the carbs, but it did not work for me.
I think that's a really good point because I could moderate if I want to. Like I'm technically moderating right now. Like I'm doing like my animal-based experiment, which I
I
don't
saw
like.
that.
I
I
hate it.
saw 4,000 calories, and some of it's coming from
Yeah,
carbs, and you
like
just feel like, eh.
I feel no benefit, but I feel
Uh-huh.
these intense cravings every night. And
Oh,
honestly, like there's been numerous nights where I'm just like, yeah, screw it. Like I'm just gonna eat whatever's in the house.
yeah,
And part of it is that bulk mindset where it's like, hey, you just got to do whatever you have to do to get calories in.
yeah,
And part of it is I'm not used to these cravings. I've never been someone that really struggled with cravings, right? Like when I would do a bodybuilding prep, I could go about a week. A week was my time frame where I would have no problems resisting anything, right? Like not even an issue. And then after about a week, I'd be like, okay, I'm starting to crave stuff. And then I would do your
mhm,
traditional cheat meal and get it out of my system. them and then go another week. But doing this, like just a few, and I haven't exactly figured out what it is. Like from a physiological level, I don't know exactly what it is. But these additions of these fruit and honey, these high fructose foods, I feel fine. And I go through the day normal, but I get to the end of the day, I don't want my steak. I don't want anything carnivore. The only thing I want to eat is junk. And I'm like, man, this is dumb. Like, why am I
Yeah.
doing this to myself? And so when people talk about you're afraid of this or no, like I know, like I'm fine. Like I'm really having no problems. I'm not feeling
Okay.
bad. I'm not having any negative reactions. I could do this probably long term. Like eventually it'd probably catch up to me if I keep eating a bunch of junk.
Yeah.
But this is not like an unsustainable way of life for me.
Okay.
However, I know how much better it is when I'm strict carnivore.
Mm-hmm.
And in the back of my mind, I'm like, why wouldn't I do that? Like, why would I do this if I know there's better out there?
Yes.
That's the thing that drives me crazy is I choose to eat this way because I know what feeling optimal is. I've done it all,
Yeah.
except vegan. I won't do that.
No.
I know
No.
that's not going to go well, but I've
Right.
done it all. And I know how I feel there. I know how I feel here. Why would I not eat a way that makes me feel the most optimal?
Yeah. Yeah, the people that criticize me for eating carnivore and say, it's really all about balance, moderation, and having all of the food groups, as if I did not try eating any other way for 25 years. I mean, I do have some experience. I've got 25 years not carnivore. The people who are criticizing typically have 0 days carnivore. Like, you can't compare. I can. So it's very clear to me which way I feel my best. It's not like I've got a lot of stock in the beef industry. There's no reason, if I was feeling worse doing this, there's no reason for me to just keep eating meat. Except that you're right, there's no comparison for how I feel.
Have you seen my big beef apparel?
No.
Oh my gosh, I should have. I have the wrong coffee mug. I have two.
Okay.
The my pronouns are carnivore one.
I've seen that one. Yeah, that's amazing.
And so many people are like, this dude gets paid by Big Beef. And I'm like, first of all, Big Beef doesn't need any help, right? Like they
No.
have government subsidies. Second of all, we don't like Big Beef. You talk to any carnivore and we would like Big Beef to go away. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to steer into the skid. And I took the Costco logo,
Okay.
right? And I wrote big and then beef, and it has the blue Costco lines in the
Yes.
Costco font with the Costco red. And I put it on a white mug and a white t-shirt. And I wear it to Costco
Awesome.
every once in a while. And every once in a while people will go, okay, I see what you did.
Yeah.
Like, whatever, I'm going to steer into it. Like Big Beef.
Right. I
Big
know.
what?
Like the
No,
beef
like,
industry knows we exist or something. No, they don't know.
yeah, right? The beef has its hands in the government coffers and, like, they don't care about us
Right.
little guys down here. Like,
Yeah.
let's be real. But yeah, I completely agree. And so many people they'll take their experience of cutting out carbs for like 3 days, right? They're like, I cut
Yes.
out carbs for 3 days and I felt terrible.
Yes,
It
you
was
did.
the worst thing ever. I'm like, yeah, well,
Correct.
of course, right?
Of course.
Like, don't give your car gas for 3 months and see what happens. It's
I'm
probably
always
not
like,
gonna
yeah,
work
me
very
too.
well.
Me too. It was awful.
Yeah, and I'm like, so and this is like what I try to do with my entire page. Show that there's often two sides to this nutrition coin. Like that's how our cells are made. Like that's how we're designed. You have a cell, a mitochondria that produces ATP. That's your lifeblood. Without ATP, you're dead. And the cell goes, you know what? I'm going to take either pyruvate from glucose or fatty acids, and I'm going to use either one. It's like a flex fuel vehicle, right?
Yes.
It's like if you had a vehicle that could run on diesel and gas, and the vehicle's like, you know what? I don't really care. I'm going to run longer and smoother with, diesel, but you put gas in me and I'm going to do just fine too. And I'm like, okay,
Hybrid.
so yeah, like we have there's nuance to our physiology, and people want to peg it down like you have to eat carbs because one time I actually saw a video of a guy do this. One time in college, I went without carbs and I've never been sicker in my entire life.
Right. Okay.
You're like, please. So with that, as a woman, right? And so this is something that people don't allow me to speak on, right? They're like, well, you're not a woman. You don't understand.
Okay.
This is a man's diet. I don't know how many times I've heard that. This works great for men, not for women. I'm just going to let you run with it because that sigh tells me you have stories behind this.
Yeah. In fact, news articles, when they come out, will typically describe it like it's all men. Male influencers, the men of carnivore. I'm like, are you kidding me?
I'm going to cut in with there. I got included in an article. They didn't name me. I was a little upset. But they talked about men on carnivore not wearing shirts and then having tank tops and T-shirts with catchy anti carb slogans, and I was like, "That's me."
Oh, that's you. Nice. Well, as a woman that does not get included in articles about men and carnivore, I see a lot of not just new carnivores, long-time carnivores. Dr. Lisa Wiedemann, I think you've either had her on or you're going to, one or the other.
She's on tomorrow.
Tomorrow, okay. I knew it was
I'm
sometime
talking
soon.
with her tomorrow.
She and I have been friends, in-person friends even. I went to her house for my very first meetup, 2009. I was a 3-month carnivore at that point, so we go way back. She's been carnivore, I don't know, 6 to 9 months longer than I have. Amber O'Hearn, carnivore, long time. Dana Spencer Shute, she's got a couple years on me, carnivore-wise. And obviously, there are tons more, but I run carnivore groups, support groups, just, I don't know, accountability groups. And I know it's partly because I am a woman, but I'm going to say it's probably 2% men at most. Hundreds of women a month doing carnivore. And then I get a couple men. Now, Dr. Chafee's groups may be the total opposite. I don't know. But there are definitely a lot of women who do great on a carnivore diet because it turns out we are actually humans. So it works out. It works
Hold the
out.
front door. Are you saying we have similar physiology?
A little bit. And it turns out hormones really love fat. So all of the diets that need us to drop fat, we're actually just trashing our hormones. I had amenorrhea, no period for 2 years. I had fertility struggles. Total carnivore, bumped my fat up, and now I've had 3 carnivore pregnancies. And I felt amazing in pregnancy, actually. I did not even have the typical, perfectly normal pregnancy issues. I have not, this is kind of a weird fact, I have not thrown up one time since the 5th grade. Not once, not during any pregnancy. That's pretty good for a lady with 3 kids. So, I mean, it can be done. Pregnant women, menopausal women, and people will ask, oh, but can you do carnivore if? I'm like, you don't even have to finish that sentence. You there? Sorry, you spazzed out for a second. You were gone. I was alone. Okay. Good. All right. No matter what the end of the sentence is, can you do carnivore if? I'm like, the answer is going to be yes, because there is absolutely no one on earth that needs sugary processed garbage food, and everybody could thrive off of some form of animal product. I know there are people they say, what about alpha-gal? Well, there's a lot of other critters out there, and I actually do have some group members who cannot eat ruminant animals because of alpha-gal, like 2 of them. This is not a majority. And they still do really well eating other animals. So, and they're women. They're somehow women also eating meat. I don't know. I think you have to be pretty ignorant to not know that women throughout, I guess from the beginning of time, also ate meat. And that we do really well with it. There's no issue with that.
That's false. Throughout history, the grains went to all the women and the meat went to all the men. Something. I don't like.
No.
But that's so many people go, I've been told that women have to have carbohydrates for their hormones.
Well, I have not met those women. I mean, I'm sure there are some women who have definitely tried carnivore and some of them will say to me right before I get my period, I really crave carbs. But typically what they're really craving is extra energy. And if they eat more fat, I have found that to be true too. And that's a very helpful thing. I think women tend to crave ice cream right before their period. Carnivore women can do that as well, but carnivore ice cream, it's not the sugar we're craving. It's more calories, more fat. And typically if somebody just really ups their dairy intake in that very last few days, then they find, it wasn't so much a carb or sugar craving. I just needed fat and energy.
I think that's an important point because subconsciously, like think about everything that's been directed towards women, and specifically women, since 1980s, maybe even before that, maybe the 60s,
Yeah.
right? Like back when they had the Special K first came out with their commercials, right? Like
Yes.
promoting Special K to lose weight. And it's this sometimes direct, sometimes subconscious, this idea of low fat, right? Lower your fat, eat less fat, lower your fat. And so many women, it is so hard for them to overcome. Like
Yeah.
I've talked and worked with people who are just like, I know, I've
Mm-hmm.
read it, I've listened to it, I know I need to get more fat, but like I have this mental block that is so difficult for me to eat the amount of fat that I need to.
Well, it's really common. Just eating enough overall, just general overall fueling yourself properly, I think is so hard for women to overcome. I also see men having far better results when it comes to weight loss on a carnivore diet. And I don't think, especially in the beginning, I don't think it's because they're male. I don't think it's the hormones. I think it is a couple things. For one, I don't think a lot of men have dieted for decades, like the women who I eventually end up working with who are in their 50s and 60s who are eating nothing. So then when they switch to carnivore, they're coming to me from such a low calorie, low fat diet that when they say, "Oh, you can eat as much as you want," first of all, they won't. They have no appetite anymore. They have suppressed it for years. Once they start really eating, if I could say, please, I'm going to ask you to track for just a little while, not to limit you, to slowly increase what you're eating. Sometimes they'll say, but I have to force in this 1,300 calories. Oh my gosh. Okay, next week I want you to bump it to 1,400. Could you give me 1,400? Sometimes round about 1,500 when they've added just a few, they go, oh my gosh, I'm suddenly hungry. I'm like, your leptin, your ghrelin, it's coming to life. This is amazing. Welcome back, ghrelin. It's been ignored for decades. So it is really hard to get them to overcome the messaging for so many years of eat less, avoid the fat, and then to also reawaken those hunger signals that they have, I mean, almost to a professional level, train themselves to ignore, to absolutely live on the edge of hunger. Because with carbs, if they ate over any certain amount, they know they gained. And I believe them on that. Like, there were times I was eating so little on a standard American diet, and I was like, how could I still be gaining weight? But everything in me was just inflamed, which, when that's the case, it almost doesn't matter how much you're eating. You're just going to you're sick. You're going to metabolize everything poorly and put on weight easily. So I don't even remember what the question was right there. But yeah, I think fat is a really hard thing. I know what it was to convince women to eat. But then once they do and they start feeling so much better. One thing I loved about our interview together is we both like lit up talking about the idea of if you can get people to eat a little more, then they move a little more, and then they sleep a little more. And it's like, oh, that feels good. How could let's do that a little more. Let's keep going. And it just snowballs into then you have a woman who's now eating, 2,100 calories, who's feeling like taking walks and enjoying her family and going on hikes and sleeping like the dead. So good.
So it's actually funny because I know we talked about starvation mode, and
Yeah.
I actually just did a video where I stitched a gal who's like starvation mode's not real. Like
Took a screenshot.
any influencer that tells you starvation mode, like don't listen to them because it's not a real thing.
See, it's you. There's the
Yep.
screenshot. This is starvation mode. Yes. I saw it this morning. I was like, oh, I like that. Okay.
And I think we need to get rid of the term, right? Like I think
Okay.
the term starvation mode is what's causing the problems. And for anybody who doesn't, everybody's heard of starvation mode. If anybody doesn't know what it actually is, it's referring to adaptive thermogenesis, which is your body's regulation after a long-term caloric deficit, right? So I have suppressed my intake for so long that my body has adapted down to meet my metabolic demands. And it's something that we don't, anybody who does acknowledge it, they're like, oh, it's so like minuscule that no, like your body can like downregulate and upregulate quite a bit.
Yeah.
which is why you get, and it's also going to control these hormones. It's why, like you said, leptin and ghrelin, your hunger and satiety hormones, your body's going to adapt to what it has, right? And I've referenced this a few times. Like, the one thing that has stood out to me in all of the classes I have taken was first semester anatomy and physiology, Wolff's Law, which is usually referenced to like bone density.
Yes.
But it's the ability to, people could find remains and just like tell you what type of work that person was in based on the changes in their bone structure, adapting to what they did, right? So you have long-term laborers with, extra bone growth in certain parts, like their lower legs, because they put their body into this demand. So it's your body's ability to adapt, which is true all over the place, right? Like animals in general, like I've brought up panda bears. Panda bears is one of my favorite examples because you ask somebody what a panda bear is and they go, they're herbivores. I'm like, well, no, panda bears are actually carnivores. But they realized that due to their environment, they could get the stuff they need from bamboo, but they don't digest it very well. So they spend 10 to 16 hours a day eating to get all the nutrients that they want. And so now they've adapted into this like kind of lethargic, like teddy bear persona when they're actually carnivores, right? They're actually like, I think of pandas as the smaller version of grizzly bears back in the day. And then they're like, yeah, well, that's too much work. Let's do a bunch of bamboo, right?
Yeah.
But it's this body's ability to adapt. And so if you continually give your body less and less food over days, months, years, decades, it makes sense that your body is now going to adjust to that, to burn less energy, to crave less food. And I think that's the point that you're getting at with, we got to train ourselves now to eat more because you're supposed to be eating more.
Yeah, there are a lot of, especially women out there, who really don't have energy to take the walks or go to the gym. I mean, it's not that they don't want to. They have no energy. And when you really find out, and I'll ask, do you feel like you're eating enough? They'll say, well, I'm certainly not hungry. I think I'm eating plenty. I'm stuffed. And this is partly what kills me about folks who say we should never track as carnivores. Like, I understand what you're saying. Because, if you're eating a species appropriate diet, we should never need to track our food. It's not like lions have apps out in the wild. No, I get that, but lions have not been through what these women have been through, right? Lions are, okay. If you do put a lion in a cage in a zoo and they are not living their normal running around out in the sun lives, zookeepers, they have to work very hard to not let the lions become obese. Even on an all-meat diet. I don't know where this notion that you cannot fatten a lion on meat came from, but it's really not true. I spoke to an actual zookeeper who was like, now that's crazy. We have to monitor their food intake. Okay, because they're not out in the wild running all day. Got it. Neither are we. So the reason I think it's important to have somebody like that to check in and track is very often what you find is they're eating 900 calories. It's so little. And they will talk themselves into, because it's meat, and it seems like, oh, that's a big serving of meat based on what we've been told, 4 ounces, palm of your hand. Oh, this is a lot of meat. They've convinced themselves they're eating a lot. And then if I can just show them even in one day, I'll say, okay, well, let's just track everything you've had today. And I say, is that a typical day of eating? And then if they can see it in print, that's 900 calories. And I say, there's no way you're going to have energy on that. And I know there are some protocols out there that say, okay, then now we feast. I want you to eat 3 times a day till your Thanksgiving stuff. And that will help overcome this under eating, slow metabolism problem. But then you've got people who have horrible digestive issues and they pack on weight really quickly because that's just a big swing. So I really do prefer a slower, more subtle reverse diet if people would like to avoid the diarrhea and 30 extra pounds. But it could be done overnight. But almost always, people will find if they can just get out of that 900 calorie ditch. And the first thing they'll say is, I can't because I'm not even losing I'm not losing weight at 900 calories. I'm like, no, I get that, babe. And you're never going to. Like, That you're not going to. You did it first though, didn't you? And they're like, yes, that worked until it didn't. And then it worked until it didn't. And it keeps cutting till now you can't go lower. I guess if they went to 800, it would work until it didn't. Right. So we've just got to help bring them out of that slowly. And typically, like I said, once they do that, they really do just feel a lot better. And that's when they'll say, I did find myself smiling and walking and just enjoying life. And you've talked before about how when people feel good, they move, they bounce, they're just, instead of, I better get everything I need while I'm upstairs to save a trip, you might find yourself just going back and forth, not trying to plan for this expedition up the steps because you have the energy, and that's going to all add up.
Yeah, we've basically put ourselves in a zoo, right?
Yeah.
And we've talked about this before. We sit a lot. Like I sit a lot, right? We ride in our cars. You get out of your bed to sit in your car, to go sit behind a desk, to then get back in your car and come home to then sit and eat dinner. And then we sit on the couch and watch Netflix, and then we go to our bed. So yeah, we don't move very much, and that is a problem. However, your body has adapted to you not moving. Your body has adapted to you not eating. Your body, all of these things. So when people go, well, I'm eating the way we're supposed to, we're not supposed to track calories. Yeah, we were also never meant to sit on our phones for 6 hours a day.
Yeah.
Right? We were never meant to, be able to take my phone and go, boom, food's on the way. It'll be here in 30 minutes.
Yes.
So yeah, we're not maybe supposed to track. Yeah, lions don't track. Lions also in the wild are not sitting in a zoo, right?
Yeah.
They're running around doing their thing. They're chasing their food down. They're trying to survive. They're moving. Yes, just because we weren't supposed to do that doesn't mean we don't have to, because you've been doing stuff you're not supposed to for a long time.
Yeah.
We sometimes got to do stuff in order to break out of this vicious cycle that we've put ourselves into.
Right. Somebody who is spending, I don't know, in certain cultures, maybe most of their time is outside and they're hunting their food. I don't believe I would ever probably need to tell them I need you to track your hunting, pull out your carb manager and track how much meat you killed and ate this week. I do think this is part of a very modern culture, of our modern poor lifestyle with modern lights and poor sleep and many decades of dieting. And I think, metabolically, we aren't what we were originally intended to be. So we might need to do a few things that feel a little unnatural, just to at least say, look at you eating an adequate amount of food for someone your age, size, and activity level. This is good. And look at that. It does make you feel better. That's awesome.
And I think for the women listening who say men have better results, I think it's also, if you take a look at what most men do, most men overeat, right? They move too little and they eat too much. It is not super common to find a male that eats too little.
Yes.
Whether that's a cultural thing, whatever it is, that's usually not the case. It is common, and I think a lot of this has to do with what we've been inundated with, right? I grew up in the era where you see those flashbacks every once in a while. They're back in 1995, this was considered obese, and it's
Right.
a normal woman.
Yes.
So yes, there are a lot of things that we have pushed upon women that have been unhealthy. And because of that, a lot of them undereat. So when you start carnivore as a man, if I'm eating way too much and I'm eating junk, simply removing that and going to meat where I feel full sooner and I eat less.
Yes.
I'm going to have big results right away.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to have quicker results going from eating 4,000 or 5,000 calories of trash to eating 2,500 calories of quality whole foods.
Yeah.
Than somebody who's eating 1,000 calories that bumps up to 2,000.
Yes.
Right, wrong, or indifference, that's just the way it is.
Yes.
And so I think people see, they see men have these crazy results, and you're like, that's like that's not a male versus female thing. That's
Nope.
just like where we are culturally and how we like got to where we're at, if that makes sense.
Well, it sure does. If I can take a woman who has not been a lifelong dieter, and a few of them actually do exist, and she then switches from 2,000 to 3,000 calories of standard American diet to 2,000 calories on carnivore, she'll usually drop weight very quickly also. You know, you certainly see stories of women who lose 100 pounds in the first year. It is the hardest case study that I ever see is the women who show up having dieted, and they're just eating very little. And for them to say, but if I eat more, I'm going to gain. And the fact is, yes, you really might for a little while. You really might, even if it's all meat. I like to be honest with people. If you've eaten almost nothing of any diet, and now you're going to try to eat way more of any diet, you might gain weight for a little while. But in the long run, of course, your glucose is coming down and insulin is coming down and you're getting healthier. And that weight, you won't become obese eating only meat, right? Some people will add on a little weight, just adjusting to a higher intake. But if they can power through that or do it slowly enough that it's not an issue, then they can eventually find, and I post almost every single day because this is my favorite story to tell. And I get to tell it almost daily, is women who say, I cannot believe that this is my life getting to eat this much food. I'm like, that's right. And many times part of that little story, I do a lot of screenshots of just group member successes, is I'm eating almost twice as much as I was before, even if they were carnivore before, and they're actually slowly letting go of some weight. It's not normally the huge weight loss if they were under eating and had to reverse diet. That's normally like a couple pounds this month, a couple pounds that month. I'll say that is the biggest win ever because now you feel good while you're doing it. Could you do this forever? They're like, I could do this forever because they feel that good. And I'm like, great, then lose 2 pounds a month forever. That's amazing. That really adds up. Yeah.
That's super true. Like, yeah, people want the super fast results, and I've said this to people before. I'm like, how long did it take you to get here?
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you told me you gained 20 pounds in the last month, and you want to lose that again, yeah, we might be able to lose that in the next month or two. But if you gained 40 pounds over the course of the last 10 years, well, like, I'm not saying it's going to take 10 years to lose that 40 pounds, but you can't expect it to happen in a month.
Right.
Right? Like, so it's just, so when you talk to people, when you have people in your group and you're working with people, what expectation do you try and set, right? So somebody's hearing this and they're like, man, I want that, but I've tried, right? Like I've tried switching over and I gained a little bit of weight and it freaked me out, so I went back. So how long does it usually take somebody to, for lack of a better term, like recharge their metabolism, get it working again, to then start seeing those results where I start to, lose 2 pounds a month?
Yeah. Well, okay. So in addition to working in my groups for the last few years, I was and still am on their list of moderators, administrators over at a couple of Facebook groups, pretty large carnivore Facebook groups. So I read over there a lot. And if you've done any reading in carnivore groups, there's literally, it's all over the place. There are people who, as soon as they start eating more with carnivore, they're like, the weight is falling off of me. And then I have just recently read in some groups where they'll say it took till the 2-year mark for weight to start coming off. And you're like, oh my gosh. I had to do a reverse diet. So I told you the first 5 years of my almost carnivore when I was on my own, I was eating almost all meat. But by the end of the 5 years, I was under eating. I didn't know I wasn't eating enough fat and I wasn't eating enough food in general. Then I met Charles Washington and the carnivores and they said, oh, no wonder you're not feeling good. You've got it unlimited fatty meat. Eat as much as you want. I was like, and as soon as I tasted fatty meat again, I was like, oh my gosh, they're so right. It's so good. So I went on all beef because that's just how they did it back then. Nobody even wasted their time in 2009 with chicken or pork. It was just, they ate beef. And they did not salt at all. This was not lion diet. Nobody had heard of lion diet back then. This was just, you don't need seasonings. We don't drink coffee. We just eat unseasoned beef. Fatty unseasoned beef. Well, I did that. No limits at all. And JT, in 6 months' time, I had put on 23 pounds. It was not muscle. I did have a little muffin top going on, and I was not happy, except that I felt so much better. Like, life had come back into me, and I really did want a baby, and my period had come back, and it was very soon after that I did get pregnant. It's like I could just feel everything in my hormones was just feeling better. So I put up with this slow 23-pound gain, and that was not fun. So for me, the answer was about 6 months. And after that 6 months, stopped gaining. And I thought, oh, thank goodness. I don't know if I want to stay this weight, but at least I'm not gaining. And then the weight just started coming back off. And I know that sounds like, oh, so what happened? What was the magic spell? I don't know. I just know that I kept eating enough, and suddenly I wasn't putting on weight. I stuck with fatty beef. I've seen that happen with many people. I had a group member once. She is 50 years old now. I met her in person recently. And when she was a long time extreme dieter, marathons, over exerciser. And she kept putting on weight throughout menopause. Up to, well, I guess she's 50 now. This has all happened in the last couple of years. She joined my group, and she hears, you need to eat more. She's like, okay. So she did not track. She didn't do it slowly. She just ate a lot of meat because, like me, she was ravenous. She'd just been holding back for a long time. She ended up putting on 40 pounds, JT, and I've got the photos. It wasn't a muscular 40 pounds. It wasn't a cute 40 pounds. And even I was like, oh, crap. I had encouraged her to do it slowly, but she's like, I can't. I'm just really hungry. And she's like, I'm okay. I'm just going to trust the process. I was like, well, you might have more faith than I do. Honestly, that's a lot of weight, sister. My gosh. JT, it took several months for her too. And then that weight started coming off. This girl is now, I would kill for her definition. She is so lean. And she said for her, she just had to eat. And she lifts. She lifts heavy. She put on so much muscle. She could be in a show. She's really hot. But she had to eat more. And it was a terrifying 40 pounds, I'm sure. She said there were days where she thought, I don't know if I can do this. Now, for anybody listening who's like, heck to the no, I'm not going to put on 40 pounds. You don't have to. I mean, you could eat, like I say, just slowly reverse your way up. And then I've seen people reverse diet, double their calories, and not put on more than 5 pounds. It can be done. But if you're hungry, it's hard. Hard to do it slowly.
I think that's like, you got to listen to your body. Like, if you're feeling better, sometimes the weight's going to be like, it's not always a negative. And so you think about like how our body operates. And if you have suppressed it for so long, it quite often is going to be like, hey, we've been like severely underfed. I'm going to hold on to some of this because who knows what's going to happen.
Yes.
Right. Like it's borderline the bear's starvation or hibernating. Right.
Yeah.
Your body knows that you might not eat a while and you're going to hold on to some. And now people will come back and be like, well, that's just not physically possible. Like that doesn't work with, thermodynamics and all that. Yeah, well, I'm sorry. It's happened since the dawn of time.
I see it all the time. Yeah.
Your body will store fat in preparation for these periods of not eating. Now, am I saying, like you said, that people have to do this and have to put on weight and they should like embrace it? No, not necessarily. There's ways to minimize it. But there may be a period where you put on fat, like especially females. The female body is designed to have more fat. Like that is your I don't want to use the incorrect term, but like that's getting prepared for childbirth. Like you need extra fat, especially in your midsection. And I'm not saying that you have to be overweight and you have to be obese, but women will also see like men that are super lean with a six pack and be like, well, what gives? I'm like, we're just different. Like, yes, we're both human, but we are also different, and women hold weight differently than men, and it's because of reproduction. So you putting on weight when you finally start eating enough is not the end of the world. Can it be frustrating? Yes. Like, it's really hard to talk somebody off a ledge who's like, JT, I've been so perfect for months and nothing has happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's difficult. Like, that's hard for me to put myself in your shoes because that doesn't happen to me.
Right.
Right. However, there are certain things you need to do. And especially if you're feeling better, like that's your body indicating you're doing something right.
Yep. Yeah. Every once in a while, it's really unusual for me to hear somebody who has started to eat more meat, increasing and increasing. Occasionally, you'll find somebody who doesn't say, and I feel so much better. But that is by far the most common story, is I really did need to eat more, and then I really did feel better. And my body didn't let go of weight at first. And then it did. And for some people, I know I don't like talking about calories, but for some people, they'll find that it just happens very naturally. And that's like for me and that group member, Heather, we just very naturally found that around the 6-month mark, we weren't starving to death. And it's like, whew, my body finally felt like sigh of relief. I felt fed. I did not need to purposefully cut anything. I just wasn't ravenous. So people say, so you ate less. I'm like, I think I did. I wasn't tracking anything. I was still eating as much fatty meat as I wanted. I didn't want quite as much. I wasn't nonstop around the clock hungry. And then started losing weight. Yes, if you want to try tracking, so you eat enough for the next, I don't know, however long you're willing to do it, you get up to what should be around maintenance calories. Your body is feeling good. You say, but I'm still not losing anything. Well, you could do a cut and you would likely see the scale start to go down. But a cut should be, 10 to 20% cut off of your maintenance, not from your super deprived, malnourished self. It's just a big step to work people back up to. And that is the biggest difference I see between men and women, is men don't normally have to do that step. They're already up here. Okay, so cut. And women are like, but I'm down here. Okay, so don't cut. We have to eat first. And it's just a slower process that will still eventually work.
Yeah, I completely agree. At the risk of, I'm pretty sure we could just do like a 4-hour live session and just talk the whole time and not feel restricted whatsoever. At the risk of this turning into a 2-hour podcast, where can people find you? Like, where, I know you have the My Zero Carb Life, Kelly Hogan, where are your socials, website, all that stuff?
Yeah, MyZeroCarbLife.com will lead you anywhere you want to go. Coaching groups and whatever. On YouTube, My Zero Carb Life. Also, just spell out the zero.
And
It's just like that.
I will link all this stuff in the show's description and all that. Kelly, I really appreciate you being on. It is, I find it more and more common to find these long-term carnivores. People have this idea that people have only been carnivore for like 2 years, and they're like, nobody's done it long-term. I'm like, well, actually, there's quite a few. Like I'm familiar with Amber O'Hearn and such. So it's nice to get, especially women that have been doing it for a really long time and gone through pregnancies and gone through, life.
Breastfeeding. I breastfed babies for 5 straight years. No carbs.
Yeah. And so I actually didn't know that. So that's a good one, because Jessalyn Randall has been the one that I've referenced.
She's great.
I can't remember how old her baby is, but her baby's only a few months old. So the same kind of thing. So it's great to have people who have been doing it long term, back before carnivore was even like a name for it. It's just this idea of eat meat, eat more red meat. So I encourage everybody to go give Kelly a follow. Go check her stuff out. I appreciate everybody who has tuned in, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.